Hello and welcome to episode 176 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam,
Sahil.
and it's been a little bit since we have recorded, but we are back, our first time recording in 2025, and we are here to preview the 2025 first year player draft.
Yeah, I'm excited. Cam and I put together a nice mock draft as we do each year. We have a varying degrees of success in picking the first round. I don't know if we have that information.
We do, in fact. Last year was our best one yet. Uh, we um, we got the first eight correct. Langford, Young, Motus, Keens, Cruz, Jenkins, Clark, Shaw, Emerson. Then I was the one who broke that streak, taking Brock Wilken instead of Hurston Waldrep, as we had mocked to me. And then we just got the next four wrong. 2023, that was coming on the heels of 2023 being our worst worst one yet. We got the first 10 picks incorrect, and then got 11 and 12 Yoshida to me and Spencer Jones to Eric. Correct. 2012 was a mixed bag, but mostly pretty good. 2022, 2012. Man, who would we have taken in 2012? That would have been Bryce Harper, would it not?
I think you're right, but let me double check that.
No, that would have been Garrett Cole or Trevor Bauer or Danny Hultzen. Man, what a weird draft.
Oh no, the 2012 draft would have been, yeah, okay. I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm looking at who would have been eligible in 2013. Oh God, Dylan Bundy, Anthony Rendon, Francisco Lindor, Javi Baez, George Springer, R.I.P. Jose Fernandez. He probably would have gone in the
Oh
first round.
God, yeah.
Jesus. Somebody called Taylor Jungmann. One, I've never heard of him. Corey Spangenberg, remember him?
I do. Brandon Nimmo's never been an All-Star. That's surprising.
Huh. I did not know that. Uh oh, hey, Bob Steve went in the first round to the Reds that
He
year.
did. He was the Reds' first rounder.
Oh my God. Um, man, what a what a draft. I don't want to get too off topic here. I wonder if that's one of the drafts we actually. I don't think it was this one that we did one of the like pretend like mock drafts as if it was like 2011 or whatever. I think we might have done it
We did
earlier.
not, but it definitely could be a good one.
It could be. But let's not get too off topic here. Yeah, so last year is definitely our most successful year. Um, I'm really excited to pick this year's picks and or do a mock draft of the picks again. And I do think like last year we are going to get the number one overall pick correct.
I
Uh,
think so. Yeah, definitely an easy first pick. Yuki's picking second. Yuki seems to think that this guy will fall to him. I disagree, but um, but Yuki seems to think that at least.
yeah, maybe it's just Yuki really wanting to uh hoping that he gets this guy at two. It's Roki Sasaki, obviously. He hasn't signed yet. He's gonna sign in the coming days, maybe before our draft, maybe not. Uh, I actually think maybe not, because I think what's happening, what's come out, at least over the past couple days, is it sounds like both the Dodgers and the Padres are looking to acquire international bonus money, and I wonder if like Roki hat is like made a decision or is about to or is giving them some indication one way or another. So now they're trying to see if they could boost up the amount of money that they can offer him. But I mean, in any event, Roki, right? We all know the story. He's 23. He's been talked about for years. I think he's going to come over here and be really successful. I mean, there is the only caution I think I'd throw at the pick is like, we've seen a couple of the Japanese pitchers come over the last couple of years and dealt with quite a bit of injuries. And I know that there's maybe it's a little anecdotal, but like it seems like a lot of these Japanese pitchers will be really good the first year and then their bodies kind of break down a little bit in the second year because they're not used to pitching, in the major leagues kind of schedule, with pitching every fifth day and the longer seasons. So um I think there's some inherent risk because of that. He also wasn't quite as good last year as he was in 2022, but like I'm nitpicking overall. He's a very obvious number one overall pick. And I think Alex is going to be really lucky to have him. Also, can we take a minute to actually I want to hear your thoughts about Sasaki first, but then I want to bring something else up.
Yeah, I don't really have any thoughts on Sasaki. Are we? So this is the mock draft portion of the episode. We're just diving right in. This isn't just like a preview, talking about.
Um,
Um,
I kind of dived in because the transition
we
provided.
can dive in. We can continue the dive.
I think
Uh,
we can bring up other things as we go through.
yeah, we can. Yeah, okay. This can be part of this. Yeah, I think Sasaki's kind of the clear number one here. He maybe his 2024 season in Japan wasn't as kind of dominant as his 2023 season. I'm not he yeah uh maybe he's not quite uh considered to be uh considered to be on par with Yamamoto now, whereas maybe this time last year Sasaki would have been ahead of Yamamoto. Um that being said, yeah, uh I do expect good things from him, and I don't know if he will have signed by the time of the draft. We're all kind of assuming it'll be the Dodgers, but maybe the Padres swoop in on him.
Yeah, and apparently the Blue Jays are still out there, but they seem to finish second or third on everybody, including the guy that they signed, Jeff Hoffman, which
Hmm.
cracks me up. Poor Blue Jays fans. But so kind of looking at back a little bit, just beyond a Sasaki pick, just a couple things I think that are interesting here. So this is now going to be the third straight season that Alex has the first overall pick. And he has been great in drafting his picks. So last year was Wyatt Langford. The year before was Jackson Holiday, and I think we all assume it's going to be Sasaki this year. Um, but not only with those picks, but overall, he's been like maybe the league's best drafter, and I don't think he's getting enough credit for this. So last year, in addition to Langford, he took Bryce Eldridge at 10. We were all shocked at the time and thought it was a reach, but obviously not. And he took Enrique Bradfield Jr. at 25, who is the only player in Baseball America to have 280 grade tools. The year before, he only had one pick. It was Jackson Holiday. I mean, he took him over Drew Jones in a very controversial pick, and that one worked out. Let's look at the year before that. He had three first round picks. Now, he took Brady House at 5, who I think is okay, but not great. Took Jackson Jobe at 6. It's a very good pick. And it took Christian Vaquero at 9, not great, but still like to get Jobe and to get somebody in house who's going to be a major leaguer is pretty awesome. The year before that, in a weak draft, he took Max Meyer and Ha-Seong King, like two very solid players. He also took Jordan Westburg in the third round. Like just insane. And then the year before that, CJ Abrams. So I mean, he is I mean, when your worst pick is like he took Bryce Jarvis in the third round one year, and then he took Christian Vaquero like as his only two complete nothing picks. I mean, Jesus Christ, what a drafter! It proves us wrong every time.
He does, yeah. I remember, yeah, being surprised he took Meyer over Asa Lacy, and that was the right call for him in the end. And yeah, especially with Eldridge breaking out. I do have a uh yeah, an interesting point about this pick. The reason Alex has this is um Alex got this pick from EBO in the Class A trade. EBO got this pick from Jake. This was originally Jake's first rounder. Jake traded it in the Spencer Strider deal, uh, um, expecting this to be like 10th, 11th, 12th pick. He ended up winning the lottery with this pick. He ended up trading the number one pick instead of what he thought was going to be a very late first rounder. So essentially, Jake acquired Spencer Strider for Yamamoto and Sasaki and Matt McLean and Marcelo Meyer. This is looking like a generational uh, overpay.
Yeah, I for a lot of reasons, I think Jake really shortened his window with the Strider and Acuna trades, and I want to be on the record as saying last year he got rid of a shit ton of depth, and I think it's coming back to hurt him. But that's for another episode, and I'm sure Jake will not be pleased to hear me saying that. But anything else we would like to say about Sasaki or the first overall pick? If not, I'd like to set the stage for some of the domestic picks that are going to come.
Let's set it. Yeah, pick number two belongs to Yuki.
With Yuki's pick, we have mocked him Travis Bazzana. Before digging into Bazzana, I think it's worth kind of mentioning. Usually we do a little bit of a kind of a overview and we kind of jumped into the picks here, but I think one thing that you and I kind of both agree with is that this year's draft is much weaker than last year's draft, especially at the top. And, I think Bazzana is a very good player. But like, I don't think Bazzano would have been a top five pick last year. Maybe he would have been five. Like, last year you had, just like Sasaki, you had Yamamoto last year, who was maybe just a more polished version of Sasaki. But then like you had three to four like elite like talents coming out of the regular draft, right? You had Wyatt Langford and Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz, and I know there was a few people who lumped Walker Jenkins into that group. Um, I don't know about you, but I don't think Bassana is as good as any of them. I do think Bassana is going to be a very solid player for the Guardians, and I think he's going to rise up the minor leagues pretty quickly. And I expect him to like be the starting second baseman for the Guardians at some point in like 2026. Um, but like, I don't know. I think he would have been like the sixth overall pick last year, but I think I like him. I kind of have him in a tier with a couple other guys, but I think you could reasonably argue he's kind of in a tier of his own, with some of the, you know, domestic FYPD guys. I don't know what your thought about him is, but like I think he's a pretty easy pick here for Yuki at two.
Yeah, I agree he's an easy pick there. I will say last year's draft is hard to compare to because it was just so good. I mean, the top five picks just incredible, all working out very well. That is not something we see normally. And then pick six, Max, really just going down. Max Clark, great. Matt Shaw, great. Colt Emerson, great. Just a really great top of the draft. Um, so uh, it's kind of incredible how all of these guys are working out. I mean, Eldridge, DeVries, Dollander's looking good. Jung-Hoo Lee is maybe rosterable. Not sure about Tommy Troy, but Rhett Lauder's been good. Eamon Naga, Kyle Teal. Last year's draft, just top to bottom, incredible. Um, this year's draft, not so much. I think I think Bazzana would probably goes, yeah, after Cruz, but before Jenkins. Um, last year's draft, but he is pretty much the clear number two here. Maybe Yuki gets cute and picks someone else, but I think he's the front runner for this pick.
Yeah, I can't really think of who else Yuki would really take with the pick. Like, just kind of looking back through his draft history, like last year he took Walker Jenkins. Like I thought that that was kind of like the clear pick. I think Cam Collier went pretty much where I expected him to go the year before. He did take Meyer with the first overall pick the year before that. That's who I kind of expected would go first overall. I mean, I feel like he hasn't really surprised me at the top of the draft the last couple of years. So I don't really have a reason to think that he's not going to just kind of take the best overall player there, and that is Bazana. I mean, maybe he does get the way I do think he could get cute with it is if he thinks, hey, I have a lot of hitting talent, but I need some young pitching, and maybe he goes after like a Chase Burns. Um, but I don't think he should do that, nor do I think he will do that. But I do think that possibility exists if he does get cute with it, as maybe he pulls something like that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I agree. I don't expect him to do that. Bazan is good. He's Australian. That's cool. He's maybe gonna have difficulty sticking at a position, but he had a power spike this last year. Um, I think he's solid. Any team would be happy to have him.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Anything else on Basana? If not, want to move to the next pick?
Yeah, let's move to number three. Number three is Daniel and Matt, and we have them taking Charlie Condon third.
Yeah, why don't you go first on this one? Why do we pick Condon?
So that's a tricky one because Condon, uh, I mean, going into the draft to start out with, like going into the real life draft, Condon was looking like number one. He ended up falling, uh, falling to number three, I believe, in real life. Uh, yeah, three in real life. He's a big power hitter. Um, just hits the ball very hard. He does have some swing and miss in his game, but he was kind of looking like he was the top bat in college this year. So that's definitely something, Jake or Daniel loves taking college bats. He's always taking college bats. That being said, I mean, um, I am worried about him. He did have a rough time um, in the minors this year. Rough first start to his professional career. There's some concerns. There's some buzz that, oh, maybe Georgia was stealing signs, and that's why he was hitting so well. Some weirdness with SEC pitching. I don't know how true that is, but he's definitely seen his stock fall going into the FYPD. That being said, I'm not sure how in tune Daniel and Matt are with whose stock is falling going into the FYPD, and maybe he's still their guy here.
Yeah, I'll give a little bit of a counter to that, and I mean I think the comparison for Condon from last year is what happened with Dylan Cruz, right? Dylan Cruz was the number one overall baseball pick in Gallardo, and I believe in maybe you could fact check me on this of the FYPD guys, Condon was first overall.
I
Uh,
believe it was Bazana first, or no, it was Condon, yeah. Well,
right. Okay.
Yamamoto first and then Condon.
Right. So but then what ends up happening, right, is he struggles after getting drafted. And these guys kind of have a whirlwind, right? You finish your senior year of college, you get drafted, you negotiate a contract, you fly halfway across the country to go play minor league baseball, and you're tired, and it's been a long season, and like I don't put too much stock into those numbers. I mean, it would have been great if he had hit the ground running, sure, but he wouldn't be the first player to end up having a really successful major league career that like got drafted and immediately struggled like 1 month after he got drafted. So I don't hold that against him, but you saw because of that last year that like a guy like Dylan Cruz slipped. And now, granted, in Cruz's situation, like in our draft last year, the three guys I went ahead of him were Wyatt Langford, Paul Skeens, and Yoshi Yamamoto. So, I mean, it was pretty justified. But like, if you believed in the talent that Condon had at Georgia, I don't think anything has necessarily changed. Now, maybe somebody smarter than me can look at what he did in the minors in Colorado and pinpoint something, but even then, like I'm not gonna hold that against him. So, if Daniel and Matt, saw the talent, going into, the actual MLB draft last year, I have no reason to believe that they wouldn't still think Condon's the same player. And then I think he inevitably gets a little bit of a cores boost. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people imagining him with that power hitting in cores, and if he's gonna have, if he has a bat that's capable of, hitting a ton of home runs, hitting for a lot of power, that elevated strikeout rate that you mentioned is not going to matter as much. If he can keep it at like a 27-28% clip in the majors, with that power, I think he'll be fine. So I do agree with you, and I do think there are a lot of analysts that are, maybe feeling a little shakier on Condon, but I think you could argue it's been overblown a bit. And would I take him at three? I don't know. I don't, but I do get why somebody would take him at three.
Yeah, certainly. Um, yeah, definitely concerns, but he's definitely got all of the skills. Pick number 4 and 5, we have Alex back to back. We can go through them both at the same time. We have JJ Weatherholt and Nick Kurtz. Um, there's some potential. Alex has mentioned he's maybe a little set on middle infield. He's got a lot of middle infield prospects. Christian Campbell. Well, actually, his farm system's pretty. Uh, it's kind of just Christian Campbell in the middle infield, but on the major league level, at least he feels pretty set there. That being said, I think there's kind of a tier break after these two guys, Weatherholt and Kurtz. Maybe he takes Chase Burns with one of these picks. He did take Chase Burns in the Gallardo draft, but I think, um, and he does. We say he always makes the right move, but but some of his moves don't seem as obvious at the time. But I think he's going to take Weatherholt and Kurtz.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'll say is that when he has, made some of these picks that make us go, oh wow, like, I wasn't expecting that. Um, it usually happens later in the first round, or kind of with a secondary pick that he has. So
Well,
like,
it also happened with the number one overall pick.
so yes, and I knew you were gonna say that. My defense of that was that, like, I don't think Holiday was so far off where, like, it wasn't like he took Elijah Green with that pick, or Cam Collier, right? I think like Holiday was kind of that second guy where, hey, if you weren't gonna take Jones, it was gonna be him. But I don't think he's gone like I think better examples are like, hey, 2022, who the hell saw Christian Vaquero going in the first round or anywhere close to the first round, right? He wasn't even the top international guy on most people's boards. As Roderick Arias, he went all the way to 23rd pick. Or like last year, right? He took Wyatt Langford with the first overall pick. That was pretty expected. But that 10th pick when he took Bryce Eldridge, I think you had a lot of people who were kind of surprised. So, um, I feel like higher in the draft, I think he has a little more of a tendency to stay kind of on board. I do think you're right that Kurtz and Weatherholt kind of represent kind of the end of a tier here. I think Kurtz makes a lot of sense for what he's looking for. It wouldn't surprise me, if he does go off board for Burns. I think you're like right, or maybe if there's another bat that he really likes. I know Christian Moore's getting some buzz. I know there's some other guys we're talking about a little later here that could potentially be interesting, but like I don't I don't see him deviating too much. Yeah, I just like I kind of think this is where he's gonna go. Um, And I think if he does, like, to get with three of the top five picks to get Sasaki, Kurtz, and Weatherholt would be an insane coup.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. I mean, yeah, to talk about these guys in particular, Weatherholt, um, he's kind of a small guy. He's a shortstop for St. Louis, but he has good power potential, makes great contact. There are some concerns about his hamstring issues. He had some injuries last year, but um, but he's kind of a clear top 3 to 4 guy. Nick Kurtz is just a big power hitter as well. Thing about Kurtz is that he's got a good eye. Some people say his eye is too good. He might walk too much. He doesn't swing enough. I don't tend to agree with that sort of characterization of him or any player, but that's the thing people have said. He's too
I do
passive.
prefer that to the alternative that he
Exactly.
swings too much. I think this is more of a correctable issue, and maybe with better pitching, he might be forced to, swing at more pitches, whereas college pitching might be a little more erratic.
Exactly. We talked about this off air, but there's not a great history of first baseman being taken this draft.
No.
Yeah, the only first rounder first baseman were Torque and Andrew Vaughn, and neither of them worked out how the team would have wanted it to go. That being said, yeah, I'm not sure how Kurtz's profile compares to, I guess, what we thought of those guys at the time of their draft. Um, I will say those guys were both taken first, and Kurtz, we're mocking him at 5, so there's a little bit less of a um, just kind of pressure on him to be the future of this team. Um, um, but yeah, and really in general, not a lot of first basemen taken. Michael Toglia went in our 2020 draft in the second round, but as did Michael Bush, and those were okay picks. But it is, um, yeah, definitely um, not a guarantee when you're taking a hard-hitting first baseman that he will continue to hard through the minors and the majors.
Yeah, and I think the threshold to be, a worthwhile pick at first base is higher than at another position. Like Michael Bush, I think is a good example. I think the numbers he put up last year, if he was your starting second baseman in fantasy, I'd be like, hey, not bad. But as a first baseman, it's kind of yucky, and he's
Yeah.
losing that middle infield eligibility this year, and that makes me less excited about him. But I think the other thing too is a lot of these players eventually shift over. Like we didn't mention Alec Boehm. You drafted him as a third baseman. He's played some first base, and I expect him to settle there long term because he's not a really good defender at third base. But yeah, I mean, I think these would be good picks for Alex. I think you hit the nail on the head. I got nothing else. Want to move on to the next pick?
Yeah, we can move on here. This is pick 6. Um, this is Ruthvik. This was one that we kind of struggled with. We gave him Chase Burns. First prospect pitcher off the board. He's a Reds pick, so I'll talk on him. A lot that I'm reading about him seems very Hunter Green. Uh, Big fastball, 101 miles an hour, but it maybe doesn't have a ton of ride on it, ton of movement. It's kind of straight as an arrow of a fastball. Um, he's working in some new pitches, and he's got a low walk rate. He's got good control, but there's definitely a lot to really only got 2 plus pitches right now. That being said, he went second overall in the draft. The Reds do see something in him. The Reds have, been decent lately at developing pitching talent, despite the ballpark. Um, they've they've found some guys. They're certainly, I wouldn't say they're one of the better teams, but they're certainly probably not in the bottom half of the league in terms of developing pitchers. Um, and I could see Ruthvik. He likes his pitchers. Um, Looking at his uh, prospect sheet right now, as far as pitchers go, he he's kind of liked going after them, and he doesn't really have any name brand guys except for like Ricky Tiedemann and Jairo Iriarte. He's got a lot of like Matt Wilkinsons and Parker Messick, cuttable guys there. So I could definitely see him wanting Chase Burns here.
Yeah, no. Rootvik was kind of a tough one, and I think one of the things you pointed out. to me when we were putting this together was just how few picks Ruthvik has actually made. So unlike, and I'll pull up the exact number here. You said Ruthvik has made 8 picks ever, and 4 of them have been international professionals. And I think like 7 of them or something like that have been like third round picks. I forget the exact number and I can't find it, but like he's not picking in the first round too often. He did make an exception against Senga a couple of years back, but it's a little tough to get a read on him and who he likes. Whereas other teams, I think we are now starting to kind of understand the types of players that they do target because we have a lot more data points.
And we
So
have, by the way, in the M-SABR prospect sheet, we have a section that I made called All Draft Picks. It's got all the draft picks and it's got a pivot table that you can edit if you want to find some fun facts. Like for example, which teams do you take college guys, high school guys, international guys? You can also sort by which major league um, teams people take from. You can even look at a draft and say, oh, this draft people took on average players who were 26 years or 22 years old. People took players who were 21 years old this draft. There's a lot you can do with a pivot table. But yeah, this is where I'm getting this data from. And to answer your question about Ruth Vick's picks by round, he has, yes, made 1 first rounder, 2 second rounders, and 5 third rounders, and that is all the picks he has made in this draft or in this league.
interesting. Yeah, there's some other fun facts in here.
Alex has made, this is fun. Alex has made 13 picks, but he's never made a second round pick.
Holy shit. That's insane. And 9 of the 13 have been first round picks. He really does not care about picks after the first round.
Yeah, even
Uh,
this year he's got 3 more firsts.
my favorite fact is for as much as people think that I hate the draft, I've actually am tied for the most picks ever made, but 17 of them have come in the third round. 17 of the 24. But I've made 3 first round picks, and 4 second round picks. So, uh, I'm not I'm not totally out of it, I guess, but Jesus, yeah, it's insane. My other fun fact, since we're here, is thanks to you for figuring this out. Andrew has taken the most Tigers prospects. I would not have guessed it was Andrew, and EBO has taken the most Rockies prospects. Like just so
Yeah,
much fun.
EBO loves their Rockies. That is true. Um, yeah. Um, I mean they love the Rockies outfielders. They would definitely take Condon if they had a spot for him there. Um, yes, shall we move on to pick number 7 though?
Yeah, let's do it. Pick number 7 is owned by Connor, and we mocked Hagen Smith to him. Not really surprised. Connor likes his White Sox. Now, he liked them a lot earlier. So, like, obviously he had Luis Robert and he had Eloy Jimenez, who he actually still has, even though he signed a minor league contract with the Rays and he's been awful. So I think it's a little interesting, right? He had Andrew Vaughn, Yoan Moncada, right? So he's had all of these guys. Actually, does he still have Yoan Moncada or did he cut Moncada? I forgot if there was somebody he got rid of recently that kind of blew my mind
I
on
think
that.
it was Moncada. He still has Vaughn, but not Moncada. I'm pretty
Okay,
sure.
okay. So yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, because we talked about that. Yeah, yeah, because Moncada is no longer yellow on the sheet. Um, but I feel like recently he has some of the White Sox right, but he's like also traded away a lot of these guys, and I think he got burned in back-to-back years early on. And I think it's kind of a miracle almost that he peaked. Like his farm really took off there for a hot sec before kind of falling back to the pack. When in back-to-back years in the first 2 drafts, he took Nick Madrigal and then he took Andrew Vaughn. So, I guess he did take Yoelqui Cespedes of White Sox fame with his first pick the year after. And then 2022 was the first time that he did not take a White Sox with his first pick, but he did with his second pick. He took Roderick Arias first at the 23rd overall pick. Then he took Colson Montgomery at the 24th overall pick.
So the point is he always takes whoever the White Sox top guy is, regardless of whether it's his first pick, but he always gets their top guy.
Well, so in 23 he took Gavin Cross of the Royals, and then he took Clark Elliott of the Oakland Athletics. I refuse to call him anything else. And there was no White Sox players taken that year. And then last year he took Chase Dollander, and then he took Kyle Teal, and then he took Jacob Wilson and Joe Whitman. That Wilson pick's looking really good right now, and no White Sox were taken in that draft either. So,
Man, 2 years with no White Sox taken. That's bad.
yeah, that's pretty insane. But yeah, I mean, just given his history, it's got to be Hagen Smith.
It does. Here's a fun fact. I'm looking at the average age of drafted players. Most people, it's either 19 or 20. Jake's a little bit higher, 21. He likes college guys. Ruth Vick's average age of guys he drafts is almost 25. He just
Jesus Christ.
loves his older guys. But yes, Hagen Smith.
Well, he
Yeah. But yes, Hagen Smith.
go ahead.
Um, he is a White Sox, but he's kind of him and Chase Burns are kind of interchangeable in a lot of ways. A lot of people, I have Burns slightly higher. A lot of people do. Um, Hagen Smith. His fastball does have more run on it than Chase Burns's does, but he doesn't have the command issue or doesn't have the control quite like Burns does. Um, we could definitely see Hagen Smith. He was from I want to say Arkansas. Yeah, it's Arkansas. College pitcher. Should move quickly. The White Sox should have him up pretty soon. Which would be nice for Connor if he's the one who takes him. But yeah, definitely he's another guy like Burns who needs another pitch.
Right. And I don't think it's totally uncommon for a lot of these pitchers who come out. I think, a lot of these teams are drafting for the talent and the potential as opposed to necessarily thinking they have everything refined on that front. But yeah, I mean, I think he's a very talented pitcher, and I mean Connor needs help all over. So whether it's a White Sox pitcher or whether it's a hitter from another organization, like, he needs help everywhere. Why not go with a guy that maybe you're a little more familiar with, given that your team drafted him?
Hmm. Absolutely. Moving on. Up next is me. Um, I am Cam, and we have me taking Cam Smith. Um, and if we did a two-round mock draft, I imagine we'd have me taking Cam again. Uh, Cam Caminiti could be right where I am. I could have the double Cam draft. It wouldn't even be reaching for either of these guys. Um, but but yes, we have me taking Cam Smith here. With pick number 8. I let you make this pick so as not to give away my board. So why do you think I'll be taking Cam Smith?
I want to read a line from Fangraphs Prospects TLDR about Cam Smith.
I'll
I
allow
don't
it.
even need to read the full sentence. Uh, Smith has similarities to Alec Boehm when he was a fresh draftee. Also, his name is Cam. Like it made sense. Um, on a more serious note, he had a really good season, or I mean, not a full season. He had a nice 32 game sample for the Astros, or sorry, the Cubs. He was drafted by the Cubs, traded to the Astros in the Tucker deal. Um, got all the way up to a cup of coffee in Double A. Um, I think he's going to rise through the system pretty quickly for the Astros, and I think he has a chance to really establish himself as either the third baseman of the future, or maybe he kind of outgrows it and ends up moving to first, kind of taking over for Christian Walker at a point. I, I don't know if I necessarily think has like the upside of Nick Kurtz at first base, but I do think he's going to be a very solid contributor. He's got a decent amount of power, maybe not the best kind of hitter for average, but uh I think he's going to be this pretty solid everyday player, and he just feels like the type of guy that fits your team. Like that, just like the type of guy that I feel like you target. So that's why I picked him.
Yeah, he's a solid pick, third baseman. I do tend to take a decent number of third baseman. Um, I know Max Brill was very not happy that the Cubs traded him away. Um, he he definitely likes him a lot. He thinks he's a he thinks he's a good piece. And then being a part of 1 year rental for Kyle Tucker, thought that was too much to give up. In this past year, he played for 3 levels in the minors for the Cubs. I have seen the Bohm comparisons. He has had some swing and miss concerns, some chase concerns, but I like him. I think whether he goes to me uh or whoever else, I think he will be a solid pick, and he's got a good name.
Yeah, yeah. I wish it was Can Smith, but I'll give him a pass.
Sadly, not a
Um,
name. Cam Smith is 5 years younger than me. He was born in 2003. All right,
Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, we're taking guys
2000s
who were born in
baby.
2006 or whatever, which is
Christ.
nuts. Pick number 9 is Daniel and Matt again. We have them taking Jack Caglione. Um, he's just kind of a big boomer bust guy. There's been a lot of Joey Gallo thrown around. He's definitely a big name in this. Um, Maybe follow like college baseball very, very, very loosely, then he'll be one of a couple names that you have heard. In addition to Condon and Hagen Smith and a couple of guys. Um, and he's got the upside, he's got the two-way potential, although I would argue that he's not like actually a great hitter or a great pitcher. But I mean, he hits for big power. He's probably just going to play first base DH. He swings and misses a lot, but the potential is there to be kind of what Joey Gallo was when Joey Gallo was hitting well, and that's intriguing to a lot of teams.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think he might be a bigger name than an actual talent. But I mean, some of those raw tools, the power is really enticing, and in today's game, you can survive with a little higher strikeout rate, with a little more swing and miss in your game if you can hit for elite power. So I I think he's a late first round grade for me and FIPDs. I don't think he's going to be for everybody. I don't know if he's necessarily my flavor, but
I bet Eric's
I
hoping he falls to 11.
interesting. I could see that. And again, I haven't really thought about the types of players that Eric is targeting, but like, yeah. That being said, I wouldn't be totally surprised if in the kind of the range of outcomes here, if people are like, hey, for space DH that has strikeout issues, I don't know if I necessarily want him, and he slips to like the top of the second round. Because I feel like every year there's a guy who you and I are both kind of like, yeah, he's probably going to go at the end of the first round at 10, 11, 12 range. And then he ends up dropping quite a bit. Like, I wouldn't be surprised that Caglione is the guy to drop this year. Just like, if people aren't really going off the name recognition and are maybe diving a little deeper into him. But yeah, I still think he's probably like a top 10 FIPD guy this year. I think in other years, like last year, I think he would have been like a mid second round pick.
Yeah, there's definitely plenty of people who like him, and we'll see if one of them is someone who's picking early enough in the first round.
Absolutely. We want to go to the next pick.
Let's do it. Pick 10 is Andrew. He was another tough one. There were a lot of directions we could have gone with this. We considered Leo DeVries just because, or no, we considered Joseph Gonzalez because of the success Andrew had with Leo DeVries last year. We ended up going with Bryce Rayner, though. Andrew's the guy who takes Tigers, apparently. Um, I think someone's going to be taking Bryce Rayner early, and I think it's Andrew. Rayner is a big guy for a high schooler. He's got a strong arm. Um, he's fast. He's got a um, maybe not as much power potential as you would think for someone with his frame, but um, I definitely see him. Um, he's a solid guy. He's kind of in this range here. Tigers fans are excited by him, and I think he's going to go sometime in the late first, whether it's to him or to Eric, or if not the very latest, he's not getting past Alex at 16.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the range he's gonna go. I think it's kind of the same with Caglione, right? I think he kind of reached kind of a glob here where it's like kind of just pick your flavor. I wouldn't be surprised if he slips a little bit, but I think just given that he's a Tiger, I think people are gonna have a little more insight into him, and I think that he's probably gonna go at the end of the first round. I mean, I think he's a solid enough pick. I don't have too many strong opinions one way or another about him. He you know, coming out of Harvard, Westlake, right? It's a school that's produced quite a few uh elite major league players. Yeah, I think somebody that big can grow into the power a little bit more. I wouldn't be surprised, right? He's only 19, I'm curious, as he ages, maybe he bulks up even a little more and you know, gets a bit more power in his game. But yeah, I don't really have much more to add. I just think it's kind of a solid chalk pick here at number 10.
Pick 11 now belongs to Eric. This is probably the easiest pick in a while. If Christian Moore falls here, then there's no way Eric doesn't take him. Um, Eric likes guys who are close to the majors, and Christian Moore, um, well, he's already in Double A. I think the Angels call him up by the All-Star break. He's just kind of a guy who's gonna move quickly, and if he's fallen all the way to 11, that would be a big steal for Eric here. Um, uh, Christian Moore, Los Angeles Angels.
Yeah, I think he's a quiet name that's kind of creeped up boards a little bit. And I've been a little, you know, certainly be a little surprised to see him drop this low, but I'll also say there's not a great history of these Angels prospects. You know, I, they come to the majors, right? And the ones that are kind of drafted with the expectation that they're gonna get to the majors pretty quickly, but a lot of them don't seem to have like the highest ceilings. Like Nolan Schanuel made it to the majors early, but like I don't think he's gonna end up actually really being anything special. Um, I think there's still the jury's still out a little bit on Ben Joyce. The velocity is obviously really intriguing, but I think it remains to be seen if he really takes the next step to being like a top prospect or not top prospect, sorry, a top reliever. Admittedly, Zach Neto's worked out, but like it's not like a perfect history for them. Reed Detmers hasn't really worked out, so. Um, I'm curious to see how this one's gonna work, but I am a little worried that uh, it ends up being a little more of kind of like a high floor, low ceiling guy. The K rates were a little high in the minors last year. Um, I worry about that hit tool. It's so we'll see, but like I think he's a really solid pick here at 11. I don't know if I'd take him like in the top five, where I've seen some people mocking him. Which like I think it's a little crazy, but like at 11, I'd be all over this for Eric, and I think you're right. I think he does fit the bill of the type of player that Eric likes. So I think it'd be a good pick for him here.
Yeah, absolutely. And moving on, we just have one final pick left in the first round, and it belongs to Jake. And we are mocking White Sox, former Red Sox outfielder Braden Montgomery.
Yeah, I like Brady Montgomery a fair amount. I think if he comes down here to 12, like I think I mentioned this earlier, but I think there's kind of a glob of guys between like 9 and 16, and I think that he falls in that group. I think he's going to be really, just a solid player. I think he'll have a lot of opportunities with the White Sox to kind of bust through. I think they'll give him a pretty big leash, and I mean, I think Jake, obviously knows a bit about Montgomery from his days as a Red Sox prospect, and I think this would be a pretty good fit. So, it's funny, Jake probably expected that he'd be picking 12th overall again in the draft this year, about a year ago at this time, and as it turns out, he is, but I don't think he's too happy about how he got here. So,
No,
I think
definitely
it's funny.
not. Yeah, I believe he does like Braden Montgomery. I remember him mentioning that around the time he got traded. Yeah, I like Montgomery a lot. He's a guy who would be a steal if he got him here at 12. Yeah, Montgomery more huge steals at these spots. Montgomery kind of reminds me a lot of Yoenis Cespedes, but a switch hitter.
Mm.
He's got a cannon for an arm. He's got a loud bat. He um, has the highest exit velocity of any college hitter. He hits the ball hard and he throws the ball hard. He does have some swing and miss issues, and he's had some injuries that we'll see how that kind of affects him. He did not play at all in the minors this year due to that ankle injury, um, so we'll see how he comes back next year. That being said, he's got all the upside in the world.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, 100%. I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't really have much more to add. Um, yeah, so that's our first round. I don't think we're gonna be as accurate as we were last year. I think that 8 for 8 to start out was pretty insane. And I almost kind of prefer that we're not 100% accurate because I think it's way more fun when we um are wrong and get to be a little bit surprised. Uh but yeah, I mean it's gonna be an interesting draft. I don't think it's gonna be as good as last year's draft, but I do think that there's gonna be some twists and turns in this year's draft, and I'm really excited to see how it all lays out. It's always one of my favorite days of the fantasy season when we get to all get together and draft. A lot of people that I haven't seen in person or even so much as in a Zoom call and maybe even since the last draft for some of them. So um, it'll be good to have everybody together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's our first round mock. Just looking at some guys who we think will go in the second. Um, I think Connor Griffin will definitely go. Um, I have not the first, then with one of the first couple picks of the second round. I could definitely
Great.
see him going to Andrew at 10. I could see him going even higher than that. He's just a real high ceiling guy. I mean, my comparison is Ellie De La Cruz. Uh he what I've heard from him just reminds me a lot of Ellie. Just with the speed, with the power, and with perhaps some of the swing and miss. Um, I would not be surprised at all to see him go uh, earlier in the first round. But if not, then he'll be one of the first couple picks of the second. The other guy is Joseph Gonzalez. It's hard to predict where these international guys will go. A lot of the times people will reach on them. Um, but last year, if anything, it took too long to pick Leo DeVries. He went kind of where I would have taken him, but even with hindsight, he could have gone higher. Um, I do not think Joseph Gonzalez is as good as Leo DeVries. I have a well, let's say this. I'm picking 8th and 21st. I would happily take him at 21, but he's not a consideration at 8. But I think he's gonna go closer to 8th than 21.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that yeah, he's probably gonna go closer to eight. I think he does have a little bit of hype. But I do agree he's not as good as DeVries. I do think he's probably going to be a second round pick, but if he sneaks into the end of the first like DeVries did last year, I wouldn't be surprised. Speaking of international guys, I think one guy who I do think could sneak into a first round pick is Sung Kim. Um, the Dodgers, obviously, they seem to just attract talent. Um, the Dodgers open up playing time for him by trading Gavin Lux to your Reds, and a deal I really like for the Reds actually. But um, while the Dodgers seem to have a plethora of options, I do think there exists uh the possibility for Kim to really run with the second base job there. He is a young player. I mean, this in a lot of ways reminds me of when Ha-Sung Kim, came out of Korea and signed with the Padres. Um, he is only 25 years old. Um, so I could see a team drafting him in the first round. And I low-key wouldn't be surprised if he gets drafted, like even in like the middle of the first round, if a team just wants that immediate impact from a young player. Now, I do think, the jump from the KBO to the majors is like the equivalent of like from what I always hear, of like the jump from like double A to the majors. So I do think if he does come up like this year, might not be the sexiest fantasy year as it was with Ha-Sung Kim when he came up. I think he really struggled that first year and he ended up kind of changing hands a bit and getting cut. But, I do think as he, gets his feet under him, I do think he has a chance to become a pretty solid fantasy asset. Maybe not like an elite guy ever, but like a pretty solid asset that maybe gets some multi-positional eligibility. Although I don't get the sense he's the best defender. Maybe he just kind of ends up settling more at second long term, although the Dodgers seem to like to move guys around quite a bit. So, um, I wouldn't be surprised if he finds his way into the first round, but I do think he'd be a very good second round pick. Kind of in a way to like, when Yuki took Jung Ho Lee last year around like I think it was pick 14. I think that's kind of what I see for Kim, if I had to guess. But I think Kim is younger than
Yeah, I don't yeah, Kim is younger. He was not as good of a hitter in Korea as Jung Hoo Lee was.
okay, so
Um,
yeah, I think that's second round.
yeah, and he's more of
That's
like a I don't ex he's more of the type of guy who's gonna max out at high single digit home runs most likely. Um, I don't know. I don't see it necessarily, at least for me, but at the same time, if Ruthwick wants an international guy, he's picking 6th. I could potentially see it there. If Jake wants some more depth for his major league team, if he doesn't want to be rostering Nolan, Shawnuel, Andy Pages, or if he just kind of has some IL eligible guys, maybe Jake takes him at 12. But I think we're looking um at a second or third round
Jake
slot for
does
him.
very badly need a second baseman, so it low key could be a really good fit. If he's willing to kind of maybe wait on him to develop a little bit.
Hmm. But yeah, did you want to talk about the other international player that you're going to be watching a lot of this year?
Yeah, Tamayuki Sagano. He's a little tricky because of the age, right? He's going to be 35. I know we've had a couple of older guys come out of Japan and Korea over the course of the our FYPDs, and uh, they never quite seem to work out the way that we hope. I do hope it's different for Sugano. I do think like what I do like about him is I just the control's impeccable. I think he has a good feel for what he does, and I think he's very confident in the way that he pitches, and I think he's certainly capable of making adjustments. Um, but I don't think it's necessarily a super high ceiling. And I do wonder if more in the larger kind of scheme of things, he might be more of a guy who teams are streaming on and off their roster throughout the season, as opposed to somebody who's really just going to stick on somebody's roster. Um, I I wouldn't be surprised if somebody took a gamble on him in kind of the end of the second round if they wanted a major league starter, so somebody who they know is going to be in an opening day rotation. I think more likely than not, though, he probably slips somewhere into the third round, and then I think at that point he ends up being a really good gamble of someone where, hey, like especially when you're looking in the context of this year's draft, and I know we haven't really talked about the third round. We talked about the first round and then now the second round, but um, I forget what year it was, but I think it was 21 where there just wasn't it wasn't a deep draft. There really wasn't great guys to take in it was the 22 draft, sorry. Um and all those guys have largely been cut and most of them have kind of been forgotten about. Or like just looking at that 22 draft, like Gunnar Hoglund, Will Bednar, Ricardo Cabrera, Lonnie White, Frank Mazzucato, Cesar Prieto, like Michael McGreevy. You know, do you really remember any of these guys? I guess I think you
I
owned
currently own Michael
McGreevy,
McGreevy.
right? But like none of those guys are really like. And I will say Andrew Painter was in that draft in that round, and Connor Norby and Jordan Wicks, Tyler Black, Zach Geloff. So there are some names, like other than Painter, none of them really like stand out as like elite assets or anything. So it was like largely a forgettable round, and like half of those guys were cut pretty quickly. Um, Actually, I take that back. The year after that was infinitely worse. That's the one I should have used. Jordan Nwogu, Cade Cavalli, Isaiah Green, Aaron Sabato, Tyler Soderstrom, Pedro Leon. I guess Mason Wynn and Jordan Westburg kind of save it, but like Bryce Jarvis, Daniel Cabrera 2.0, Cole Wilcox, and Jared Kelly. Um, I kind of see this year's third round looking like that, and to tie it back home, if you're going to take kind of a dart throw, why not take a dart throw and a guy you know is going to pitch in the majors this year versus a guy that you're not really confident is going to do much of anything?
Yeah, I think Sugano's um he's the type of guy that that always seems to go in the third round. Um I would be shocked if he doesn't get taken just because Ruthvik has the final pick of the draft, and if he's available at that point, then Ruthvik will 100% be taking him. Um yeah, I don't know a ton about him personally, but he's, going to be in the majors this year. That is, yeah, definitely could be worth the flyer.
Yeah, I agree. Let me see if there's anybody else that I want to bring up. Honestly, not really. Um, Again, I mean, I just think it's a really it's not a great draft compared to some previous.
It's not, yeah, and I'm glad I don't have to have a third round pick because I really don't know who I'd be targeting in the third round here. But um, there's some interesting names in the top and the middle. I think the second round could get really interesting. At the very least, there's a lot of names that I don't know where they'll go.
Right. And I will say for all of the like negative things I am saying about this year's draft, I think the last draft we were this negative about was the 2021 draft, right? That was kind of coming off of the COVID season. You didn't really know anything about a lot of these players. And then on top of that, well, you had some players kind of defer, stay in college, right? So the pool ended up inevitably being weaker as well. Um, and I do remember there was a really big emphasis and a really big rush on teams trading out of picks in that draft to get picks for the next year. That might be the only time in the league where there is where future picks were more valuable than picks for the draft that was immediately coming up. And there still ended up being some really awesome players that have come out of that draft. I think I said 21, but I meant 22. Like, Marcelo Meyer, Jordan Lawler, Jackson Jobe, Sai Suzuki, Colton Cowser. They were all first round picks. Second round and Matt McClain, Gavin Williams, James Wood, Colson Montgomery. So I, it- it's there's going to be value in this draft. I think it's going to be a little harder to figure out who those players are. I don't think that teams are necessarily going to be gifted some of those elite talents, or have kind of picks where they have just like embarrassments of riches to pick from, where I think some teams were picking at last year. But I think there's some good talent in this draft, and I fully expect in 3 to 4 years we're going to be talking about some of these names as really big contributors to various teams in this league.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think that just about covers the 2025 draft. We will be back following the draft with some recap with hopefully an interview with someone that we thought drafted particularly well, and with the announcement of the Kyler Murray and Jose Peraza awards.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. I those are two of my favorite awards we give out all year. Speaking of awards, if you haven't voted for the awards yet, please vote for the awards. We would like to do an awards episode soon. So you all are the reason we haven't done an awards episode. So go vote for awards.
Go vote for awards. And see you next time once we know who these draft picks are.
Yep. See you on the other side of the draft.
Hit a drop kings, I bet 100 on myself. I've been all alone, ain't never need nobody else. I'm at the top floor, sipping margaritas off the shelf. Wish I had some competition, but it ain't nobody low. Hit a drop kings, I bet 100 on myself. I've been all alone.
This podcast is good.